Hey everybody, I'm your host Kai.
And I'm this week's, month's, whatever it is, co-host Diamond Ash.
And this is another Strange But True of the Bizarre Ones podcast, so let's just jump right into it. Alright, so the first story is this passenger allegedly stripped naked and defecated in her seat on a flight to Chicago. So, the police were called to the Southwest Airlines flight landing in Chicago after reports that a passenger removed her clothes and defecated in her seat. So, yeah, they had to call the police because she literally decided to take a crap in her seat, and so they called the police, this woman's stripped naked, and she's come and she crapped in her seat. Well, that sounds like a shitty
experience for everyone involved, if you ask me, because, she crapped in her seat and whatnot, and she stripped naked. Was she naked before she crapped? And did she at least pull her pants down before she crapped in her seat? Or did she crap in her pants and that's why she took off her clothes? Either way, it was a very shitty thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very shitty thing to do. So the police were called to the Southwest Airlines flight landing in Chicago after reports that a passenger removed her clothes and defecated in her seat, a source told NBC News. According to a statement from the Southwest Airlines flight 418 en route from Philadelphia to Chicago Midway Airport was met by law enforcement officers and medical personnel responding to a situation involving a female passenger. A source told NBC News that the passenger removed her clothes and defecated in her seat. So it sounds like that she removed her clothes first, like you were asking, Ash. So it sounded like she removed her clothes first before she defecated. So, I mean, at least she didn't shit her pants or anything, even though, I mean, still, somebody's got to clean that shit up.
I mean, like you said, somebody's got to, clean all that up. And, I mean, you at least would think she'd have the common decency to, clean up after herself, but it sounds like she might have been suffering from some kind of mental health issues. And, I mean, this incident that you talked about in this article follows a series of flight-related problems for airlines. Like, recently, I was reading a Southwest flight in Houston was evacuated due to an engine fire. A Lufthansa flight was forced to land in Boston after an iPad became lodged in a passenger seat. And actually, in fact, Southwest announced this month that it will reduce capacity later this year as it anticipates a decline in revenue.
Wow, that's crazy. So, I mean, like you said already, it's just a lot of crazy stuff going on, right? I mean,
so basically, the airline is just 1 month away from changing its traditional policies and charging passengers for checked baggage as well, from what I read as well. So, I mean,
wow, that's a lot of crazy stuff going on, right now with the flight thing. It just seems like it's, what do you call it?
It just seems like, flights in general are not doing well. And so, I mean, This is just the shit on the shit sandwich, if you will, adding to the laundry list of problems that airlines are having to deal with and whatnot.
So true, exactly. But yeah, like you were saying, I mean, it just seems like that particular airline's not doing that well, or airlines in general. So, speaking of news stories dealing with shit, I got another news story for you. So this next pooping story, if you will, this next shitty-ass story takes place in Pennsylvania, I believe. The mysterious Delco pooper. So basically, her and this other driver got into a dispute, and because of this dispute, she got pissed and took off her pants or pulled down her pants, whatever, and literally took a crap on this woman's vehicle. So, I mean, this is a case of road rage that led to this kind of situation where she thought it was appropriate to crap on the person's car.
Actually, I think I've seen this video. It was shot by a bystander, and it took the internet by storm, and it appeared actually on TMZ. The video I've seen that you're talking about, Kai, shows...
Yes, I think that's the exact video that you're talking about.
A woman exit a vehicle, apparently pantsless, right? So she didn't have her pants on. The answer to your question on that.
Okay, because, yeah, I was wondering if she actually had her pants on and when I haven't seen the video yet, at least not as recording this podcast that we're doing.
So she moved to the front of the other person's car, right? And she stopped, who had stopped behind her, and she sat for a second on the victim's hood, and then she returned to this sedan, flashing a smile as the other driver shouts at her. Left behind in the hood was this brownish glop and whatnot. And she even actually said that, she didn't even have to wipe and whatnot. But when you watch the video, you're like, are you sure about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I doubt that she was correct about that. She's like, oh yeah, I didn't even have to wipe. I'm pretty sure somebody that's unhygienic as that particular person is unhygienic, that they would obviously not really care if they had to wipe anyways, to be honest. They would just be like, oh, I did it anyways, because if you're that unhygienic to the point where you think it's perfectly okay to crap on somebody's car because you had a little fit of road rage, if you will, you're obviously not even going to think about that. And I hope this person does laundry, or at least changes their panties every single day, because, oh my god, that is one disgusting story, if you ask me.
So that whole thing actually reminds me of one other story that would go perfect with this before we get off of this crappy subject.
Okay.
In India, New Delhi, I believe, there was this person who was a thief, and he did this, what they referred to as a poop and run.
A what?
So basically, this guy can poop on command, if you will, and apparently he has this level of control of his bowels that he can defecate at any moment. He's this 27-year-old phone thief from Delhi, India, and that's how he avoids law enforcement. Is because, a lot of people didn't want, he would evade arrest by just pooping his pants, and the stench was so foul that the police were like, ugh, and would be gagging and stuff, and they would just take off, if you will.
So you're saying basically that it was so bad that they would be like, yeah, we're not dealing with this, and they would just leave him take off and whatnot. They'd like stay there while he would run off, if you will. That is, oh my god, that is crazy.
So because of this unique method of him escaping, that basically he just poops and then he runs and people allow him, he was spotted near this park, right? And because they knew his poop and run technique, they prepared accordingly to make sure that they could endure the stench of it. And following this historic arrest, a case was registered against him, and he confessed to multiple mobile thefts and knife-related crimes in the area. The police said that he had this long criminal history with over half a dozen cases against him, but because of his pooping and then running, they didn't, that he would get away with it, and that's how he avoided capture for...
Yeah, I'm assuming he avoided the capture because nobody could stand the stench of it, right?
So long is because they couldn't have handled the stench of it, but they finally smartened up and finally found a way to catch him.
Well, that's good that they finally found a way to catch him. I mean, because, because of all the crime that you listed that he did. But the crazy part is that he got away with that so long. I mean, it must have been really bad. Must have smelled really bad to the point that they couldn't catch up with him. I don't know why they didn't think of it sooner. Whatever methods they used to be able to withstand the stench, they probably should have done that to begin with, and they probably could have got him a lot sooner. But I mean, it's a good thing that they finally got him, and we're like, "You're going to jail, buddy." I mean, it's a case closed. But wow, how would you like to have $800,000?
I'd love to have $800,000.
Okay, what if that $800,000 was in dimes?
Ooh, I don't know if in dimes I'd want it.
Well, that's exactly what this next story is about, is $800,000 worth of dimes was spilled on the highway, if you will. This semi-truck spilled $800,000 worth of dimes, causing an unfathomable, annoying cleanup. So that's approximately 8 million dimes, right? And even despite the help of vacuums, some had to be picked up by hand. So they had dropped $8,000 worth of dimes. That's a lot of spare change, if you will.
So $800,000 worth of dimes was spilled on the highway. Exactly what was going on with that? Why was there $800,000 worth of dimes in a semi-truck?
Okay, so the reason that these these $800,000 worth of dimes was in a semi-truck is basically it was the newly minted coins, right? And this happened, of course, in Texas. The incident happened on Highway 287 in Albert, a town located about an hour northwest of Dallas. Local news outlet explained that the driver veered off the road about 5:30 a.m. on April 30th and overcorrected and rolled. So he tried to, correct himself, but unfortunately rolled. The trailer flipped with the truck and spilled roughly $800,000 worth of dimes onto the road. The reason the truck was carrying that many dimes is where the load was headed isn't clear. But according to Fox News, it spilled one hell of a mess. So, I mean, these dimes were all over. I mean, if you've ever been surprised at, like, how much money you're carrying around after emptying your car's ashtray, you know that loose change adds up very quick. And this truck was carrying about 8 million dimes. The video footage, right, shows that the cleaning up the spill required these huge vacuums that were mounted on trucks, and numerous workers equipped with shovels, rakes, and other garden tools. And some workers even ended up picking up dimes by hand. And from the footage that I saw, right, if you will, it spilled into the grass. So they had to pick up these dimes from the grass of where it had spilled as well. Hold on, I think I got the news thing. If I can get it to play. But yeah, here it is.
Well, here is a tough job workers did not expect today. They spent hours picking up millions of dimes spilled on the side of a highway. They used vacuums, rakes, and even got down on the ground and picked them up with their hands. It happened along Highway 81 in Alvord in Wise County. Adriana de Alba explains how long it took to clean it all up.
It was a rare sight that sparkled even from above.
I was just curious what it was.
Along Highway 287 in Alvord, a tiny coin caused a big mess.
First time we've ever seen that happen.
Texas TPS says it was just after 5 this morning when a truck driver veered off the road, overcorrected, then overturned.
I just saw a truck flipped over.
And when that semi flipped, silver rain came pouring down, freshly minted dimes spilling out of the truck. Millions of them.
That's a lot of dimes.
DPS says it was $800,000 worth, to be exact.
That many dimes is, well, that's mind-boggling.
They were scattered all along the highway, shutting it down for hours, causing major traffic delays. The driver and passenger of the semi-truck are okay.
I almost came out here with like a bucket so I could fill it up with some dimes.
So, as you can see, like $800,000 worth of dimes, and actually even had to, cut off the traffic as well, if you will.
Like, redirect traffic to get away from the $800,000 worth of dimes. And I thought it was funny in the story that there was a woman that said she had gotten a bucket.
Yeah,
I wonder if she was able to take that change home, or if they actually,
probably
told her, hey, you got to give that change back,
She probably had to give that change back. Like, they probably allowed her to help and whatnot. But maybe they did. Maybe they gave her a reward for helping out. Who knows? But I guess it's time for another story. So let's jump to the next story. All right, so this next one, it's more of the headline, if you will, that is crazy, if you will. Not so much the article.
So it's just basically the headline that actually is the crazy, strange part. The rest of the article, I'm assuming, is not too crazy, right?
Right. So the title of the article, if you will, is Neighbors Demand Answers After Rampant Masturbation Takes Over Seattle Park. And I bet in a million years that you never thought that I would actually say that in this in a strange but true video. Am I right?
No, you're right. I never expected that to be a title of an article.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Rampant masturbation. What exactly is that?
I have no idea exactly what is that, but that's literally what it's titled. So this park, if you will, apparently supposedly has rampant masturbation going on at the park, claims this one group, Friends for Danny Blaine or something like that, and they claim that that's going on at the park. But another argument person says, well, this lawsuit in particular basically doesn't just stop with the so-called illicit or illegal activities, and wants to ban nudity from this particular park, which is acceptable in the park because in the particular area that's located in the United States, it's not illegal for, to be nude. And the main person that filed the lawsuit's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to stop, if you will. I'm just trying to stop the the other parts of activity, but it's also a inclusive space for LGBTQ people as well. And so the other person arguing against the lawsuit says, well, if you stop, the lawsuit doesn't just stop the particular activities that he's claiming he wants to stop. It's also particularly stopping anything that the park usually would have, if you will. So like I said, the article is the strange part, and there's no actual proof of the activity that he claims is happening at the park actually happening at the park. So it does seem like that this particular person that filed the lawsuit, he just wants to be bigoted and stop, people from going to the park that he doesn't like or approve of, and it's just ridiculous. But I guess basically the story in itself is not the strange part. It's just the title of the article, or what he tries to claim is happening at the park. Like, it just sounds like a fear-mongering kind of stuff from the 50s that you would hear when they try to scare people away from certain things. So this man had accidentally bought his own car after having it stolen a few weeks earlier. So he was devastated. He had this 9-year-old Honda Civic, and it was stolen. So he started looking online, right? Because he had become attached to the vehicle. And he was like, you know what? I want a vehicle exactly like that. And he found one that was virtually identical down to the custom exhaust system. And he was like, oh, wow, I'm pretty lucky, right? And he had even considered the possibility that it actually was his car. But, he doubted it. And he said, so it seemed perfect. 36-year-old Ewan told Yahoo News UK, I went down to the garage to check it out, and I think my judgment was a little clouded by how desperate I was to replace my car. I didn't do the most thorough check. So he ended up paying £20,000 or $26,800 in American money for the black Honda Civic, but he quickly started noticing strange things. While checking the trunk, he found a tent and a hood and some Christmas pine trees that he had in his stolen car. Then he found some wrappers he remembered leaving in his old Honda, and finally there was the distinctive smell of beer that his Honda had, since he had accidentally shattered a beer bottle in it one time when he was driving home after buying some alcohol. That's when he realized why he was, that it was actually his car. So he started driving home, and he felt a little strange about the situation because it could have been a coincidence. But then he says, so I suddenly had the idea of checking the sat-nav history. Sure enough, it was my address, my parents' address, my partner's address, and the places we'd visited over the previous couple of years. And then it dawned on me that my phone connected instantly as I left the garage, rather than needing to pair it as a new device. So it's pretty clear to me that it was my car. After contacting the police, he learned that the vehicle identification number did not match the one of his old car because the thieves had gone to great lengths to replace it. It had been scratched off the engine, and embossed plate on the door frame had been replaced with a sticker, and the engine serial number had been painted over. And then he's like, it was my car. They did further checks, plugging the laptop into the car, and managed to find the original VIN number. So they attempted to override the VIN number in the ECU, even though it was tricky to find. So yeah, he basically found the car that was his, and he literally paid for the car that was already his, that was stolen from him. So this story, if you will, is about an 80-year-old woman who falls from a 6th-floor apartment and survives unscathed.
Yeah, from those kind of heights, I would assume that somebody wouldn't be able to survive from those kind of heights. So it's kind of crazy that, she did.
Yeah, so this 80-year-old woman from Yekaterinburg, Russia, can call herself lucky to be alive after falling from a window of her 6th-floor apartment after landing on top of a parked car. I wonder if it was the parked car part that helped her survive and, didn't have her falling to her doom, if you will. It occurred last Thursday as she was cleaning her windows of her apartment, and a single moment of carelessness sent her tumbling down, and she fell onto her neighbor's car. It was captured by CCTV cameras, and it's been making the rounds on Russian social media ever since. And amazingly, like a few moments afterwards, when she landed on the roof of the parked car, she managed to climb down and walk away unscathed. She asked a neighbor for help, and she was admitted to a local hospital to ensure that she was all right. But yeah, apparently she fell from these high heights and completely survived, and you wouldn't really expect that kind of thing, if you will, to, happen where you're at that kind of height, and, at like 6 floors, and you fall down and you don't die. But she did. She didn't die.
Okay, guys, so here's a more, even stranger story, if you will, to fit within this strange true podcast. There's this island, right, where these mysterious goats survived over 200 years isolated on there with no fresh water. And scientists are trying to understand how these herd of goats not only survived, but thrived on an isolated island in northeastern Brazil for over 2 centuries without any known fresh water source.
No
So
fresh
there's
water?
no known fresh water source at all on this, island.
Wow, so there's no fresh water on the island yet. Somehow these goats seem to thrive on the island without any fresh water. Like, exactly what were they drinking then if there was no fresh known water source?
So it's not exactly clear exactly where they were getting any water. I mean, obviously we're getting water, but I guess not fresh water.
Okay.
But the goats originally wound up on Santa Barbara. It's one of 5 volcanic islands that make up the Abarolos archipelago, about 70 kilometers off the coast of Baja. And scientists
Gotcha.
believe that they were brought and left there by colonizers, but they don't know.
Gotcha, that makes
There was
sense.
like livestock, like goats, pigs, and poultry made for a reliable food source.
Yeah.
But they were usually left behind when colonization failed. The presence on Santa Barbara Island has been documented for more than 250 years, according
That's a
to
lot of
historical
years.
records, which is remarkable if you take into account that the small island has no fresh water source.
Yeah.
Despite this inconvenience, these goats thrived on the dry, windy island to the point where they had to be relocated in order to protect endemic plants and animals. So basically, they were kind of like more of a what you call it, if you will. They were a species that was eating up all the other species and putting that ecosystem in danger. And they're
I got
like,
what
you know
you're
what, we
saying.
need to move these goats elsewhere. And so last month, the
protect the
Chico Mendes
ecosystem.
Institute for Biodiversity Conservation, which manages the National Marine Park, carried out the removal of the last 27 goats on Santa Barbara after it concluded that their presence compromised the island's ecological balance,
That makes sense.
particularly affecting 7 species of seabirds that breed in the region. However, the animals were not eradicated because scientists want to study them because their ability to survive on little or to no water and having no fresh water source.
Yeah, that makes sense. That even though they were like damaging that particular ecosystem and like eating up on the thing, I think it's ironic that as a species it was like messing up the ecosystem, but somehow these goats that, like you said in that article, they were particularly able to somehow survive without any fresh water source, and that is to be studied because it's like, how were they able to do it? Did they somehow evolve with all that time of being on the island that they're not like other typical goats and they could drink other types of water, or perhaps they could eat plants, if you will, that contain the water, like how a cactus, if you will, in the desert maintains water, in it. And so certain species in that desert can eat the cactus, get the water from it. So maybe these goats were able to do that, but with other particular plants in that area, and that's where they got the fresh water, source. Who knows?
Exactly, exactly like how exactly did they find any water supply? One of the quotes by one of the people that studied these particular goats said, "We believe they developing talents to survive." Roca, the head of the National Marine Park area, said, "If their population hadn't been controlled, they would have taken over the entire island and self-destructed. So they would completely destroyed the ecosystem." And in all the years that the scientists were studying the mysterious goats of Santa Barbara, they never once saw them drinking water, which begs the question, how did they survive for over 2 centuries? Now, at this point, experts can only speculate, but it's similar to what you said, like how you were talking about the cactus, of how certain desert life will, if you will, eat the cactus because it maintains the water. There's this plant on the island called Droga, which is a plant with a high water content found on Santa Barbara for the animal's survival. So that might have been how the goats were able to survive, if you will. But the goats of Santa Barbara weren't just surviving there, they were thriving.
Yeah.
And researchers reported that most of the births on the island were twin births, which suggests that the goats were well nourished and healthy to the point where they just could, reproduce like crazy.
Yeah.
And studying the goats of this island, they believe they will help decipher the secret to their extreme resilience, which could help develop new breeds better to survive the challenges of climate change, adapt in arid regions such as northeastern Brazil or anywhere else. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And like you said, this could help break through. I mean, it's strange because nobody knows exactly where these goats were getting the water supply. And it's like, how are they surviving without fresh water? But it could also unlock the ability to where we could make it certain, animals be able to survive in harsher climates, and especially with the way global climate change is and our climate changing at a rapidly pace, we could, perhaps unlock it to where we could perhaps more adapt to the environmental changes. So that is a very interesting, strange, true story. So speaking of species thriving in situations you wouldn't think would be possible. Scientists have discovered this tree that thrives when struck by lightning. See, because lightning kills most of the trees, but scientists have discovered a tree species that not only survives lightning strikes, but thrives as a result of them. So for the longest time, there is a consensus that, lightning is a negative effect on trees. Like, lightning is usually a negative effect on anything. In the best case scenario, a struck tree barely survives. In the worst case scenario, it's just, you right? But scientists, as we keep venturing into uncharted territories like the Amazon forest and gathering data on new species, theories, and about things, lightning-resistant trees begin to appear. It wasn't until about a century ago that evidence of such super trees were discovered. Scientists now know of at least one tree species that not only shrugs off multiple lightning strikes in its lifetime, but actually attracts lightning and uses its destructive power to kill surrounding trees and hog all the sunlight surrounding nutrients for itself. So this tree is somehow able to take the lightning and harness it and to kill any of the plant life around it, so it can take all of the nutrients for itself. See, in 2015, while working in Panama, Evan Gore, a forest ecologist at Cary Institute of Ecosystem Studies, came across a remarkable sight. It's a Dipteryx oleifera tree that survived a powerful lightning struck with very little damage. The same could not be said about the vine that had entangled it and dozens of trees surrounding it. The vine had been blasted out of the tree's large crown almost completely, while all the other trees around it had died. After analyzing, the scientists deduced that this tree could easily withstand lightning strikes, but there was no way to be sure. So during the research in the Panama jungles, him and his team came across other trees of that, aka known as alamundo trees, that appeared to have thrived after getting struck by lightning. Instead of dying off like the other species, it only reinforced their hunch that there was something about this tree species, but they decided to prove it scientifically. So using a special lightning location system, the team tracked the outcomes of 93 trees that were struck by lightning in Barro, Colorado Nature Monument, measuring parameters like survival rate, physical condition, parasitic activity, death rate of surrounding plant life for a period of 2 to 6 years. And their findings, of course, were remarkable. In a paper recently published in the New Phytologist Journal, Gore and his team wrote that all the 9 Dipteryx oleifera trees included in their research survived lightning strikes with very little damage compared to other 84 trees which suffered severe damage, with 64% of them dying within 2 years and almost all of them losing 5.7 more leaves from their crowns. The more they researched this particular tree, the more they became sure that this species not only withstood lightning strikes, but thrived because of them. Their data showed that an average of 9.2 neighboring trees were killed when the tree got zapped, with electricity getting transferred through touching branches, vines, or small gaps between the trees. The lightning also relieved them of about 78% of parasitic vines, giving them more access to sunlight and nutrients. So this tree, literally benefits from lightning strikes. And even Gore writes that these trees tend to be several meters tall than neighboring trees. So they get taller as well. And were 48% more likely not to die. The trees around them were more likely to die than those that weren't. This suggests the tree is deliberately attracting lightning strikes in order to destroy its rival and ensure optimal conditions for survival and growth. Scientists have yet to discover how exactly this remarkable tree species can survive lightning strikes and kill other trees surrounding them. But they suspect it might have something to do with the tree's high conductivity, and they're also interested in other, species with similar properties. And so, yeah, it's like, the goats, or that we were talking about in the previous story, that this particular tree can harness the power of lightning and thrive, and then kill off any other trees and get all those resources and nutrients. It's an amazing story.
So you know the phrase where somebody goes, "Oh, I put my foot in my mouth," right?
Yeah, I know that phrase. What about it?
Well, have you ever heard the phrase, "Hey, instead of foot in the mouth, I put my hand in the mouth," but not just, the hand in my mouth, but the hand in somebody else's mouth?
I can't say I've ever heard that phrase, to be honest.
Well, that's exactly what happened in China. These doctors at a hospital in Jilin, China, recently reported one of the most bizarre cases yet, or strange case yet. A woman who had gotten her hand stuck in her boyfriend's mouth while trying to film a funny video.
Wow.
Clips and photos of the couple walking into the emergency room of the hospital have been in the rounds on Chinese social media. So, if you will, I guess as a joke, she was like, why don't I, have it to where I go like this, and I'm going to put, my hand in your mouth? And he was like, sure.
Yeah, because I mean that's the most reasonable thing. When somebody says, "Hey, I'm gonna put my hand in your mouth," that's the most reasonable thing, is just to like stick the hand in the mouth. So did it get stuck there or something, and that's why they were in the emergency room?
Yeah, it got stuck there. There, like I said, clips and photos of the couple is on, Chinese social media. And it doesn't sound very intriguing at first, but what really attracted the people's attention was that the woman had her hand in the man's mouth, and apparently they had tried to shoot this funny video to post online, which they tried to see if the woman's hand was small enough to fit in her boyfriend's mouth. And apparently was, but when she managed to stuff her fist in his mouth, at first just fine, but when she tried to pull it out, his mouth muscles stiffened, and that's when his hand became stuck. And they repeatedly tried to pull the thing out of his mouth, but they realized that they needed medical attention, and the doctors were like, huh.
Yeah, they would be. I mean, that's probably not every day they see.
Boyfriend's hand, your hand is in your boyfriend's mouth, and it's stuck there. And the thing is the woman said that her boyfriend's face gradually turned red, and all her efforts to yank her hand free from his mouth were useless. He drooled continuously because he couldn't close his mouth, and his throat kept on making a gurgling sound. To make matters worse, his teeth clamped down on her wrist because of the contracted muscles. So, I mean, yeah. I guess this just goes to show kids don't stick your hand anywhere where your hand shouldn't be.
And especially in people's mouths. Yeah, like, definitely don't do that. You end up in situations like this, woman and her boyfriend, if you will, and you get in this, it's a good thing that they most likely got the hand out, right?
Oh, yeah, they got the hand out of the man's mouth.
That's good.
Dr. Zhang Mingyan, who handled the case, said the girl's hand got stuck because her boyfriend's jaw muscles had contracted, preventing them from opening his mouth. This created a dangerous cycle. The more the pain, the tighter he clenched his jaw.
Makes
sense. To solve the problem, the hospital staff first tried to calm the patients, calm them down, tell them it's okay.
Yeah.
And try to prevent the man from choking or vomiting by playing soothing music. Then they used a special mouth opener to expand his jaw enough to inject a muscle relaxant in a specific area.
Oh, okay.
After about 20 minutes, they gently rotate the girl's wrist, taking advantage of the sliding property of the jaw joint to finally unjam it. He presented the case as a cautionary tale, warning people that forcing a person's jaw open can cause nerve damage and dislocation of the jaw. And then the person that wrote the article said, we should add that you should not jam your fist into someone's mouth, just to make sure. And you think people would, know these things, right, Kai? You think they would know, hey, you shouldn't stick your hand in somebody's jaw. But, there's warning labels on various things that you think there wouldn't be warning labels on,
Oh, yeah, there's like a warning label on, toasters not to, put a fork in your toaster. You would think that, people would know not to stick a metal fork into a toaster. Somebody I know had bought a curling iron like a few years back, and on the curling iron instructions, it said, please do not stick in any orifices orally or, elsewhere. And you'd be like, who did that? But they say that there's warning labels because at some point somebody did exactly that, Okay, so that's all we have time for in this episode of Bizarre Ones, Strange But True News Stories podcast. I'm Kai Lacrosse, and
I'm Diamond Ash. Oh, and thank you, Kai, for having me on this episode, or in this episode, if you will, of this podcast, of your Bizarre Ones podcast. I've been in your YouTube videos on your YouTube channels, both your Bizarre Ones studios and your Crazy Like a Fox studios video, if you will. So I really appreciate that you were waiting for me to be in this episode of this podcast, and that's why you had waited, if you will, to to upload it when you're uploading it, is because you want to make sure I would be able to be in the podcast and participate. So I appreciate you waiting, even though it went past your deadline that you usually have for your podcast.
It's no biggie.
Of Bizarre Ones, but I really do appreciate you having me in the podcast, having me in this podcast, if you will. And, even if it was that we couldn't record it like person to person and you had to call me on the phone, which is, we're right now talking through, if you will. But anyways, thank you for having me in this podcast.
No problem. Thank you for being in the podcast with me. I really appreciate it. So everybody, that was Diamond Ash. She does have a YouTube channel, but she hasn't uploaded anything in it for quite a few years, if you will. But she does make content, or at least has made content for a while with me on my Bizarre Ones Studios YouTube channel, and also makes content with me on my YouTube channel, Crazy Like a Fox Studios, where I do reaction content. She does reaction content, and so does Tanya Kitsune. But anyways, thank you for all of you that are listening to this on Spotify or watching this on YouTube. I really appreciate those that are. This is episode 8. We have episode 9, 10, 11, and 12 coming up with the podcast, if you will. And those will, after episode 12, which will be in a few months, because episode 9 will be... hold on. So we got episode 8... and that is May right now. 9, 10, 11, 12. So around August or September. So around September will be the 12th episode of and that's where the first season of Bizarre Ones podcast will end. And I'll take a few month break before we start more episodes of the Bizarre Ones podcast. So around September, I'll take a few month break. It'll be sometime in 2026 when I'll pick it back up. And for the second season of Bizarre Ones, it will focus mainly more on the paranormal stories, or the strange, bizarre stories, than the strange news stories, if you will. But anyways, thank you for listening. For those of you that are listening on Spotify, and those of you that are listening on YouTube, thank you. Or if you're listening to on SoundClick, since I do upload these to SoundClick as well. So thank you for listening. I've been your host, Kai. As she said, she was Diamond Ash. And we thank you for listening. This has been another episode of Bizarre Ones. And that's all we got. Until next time, stay bizarre.